Hi, folks.
Hey guys, we're going to give everyone a couple minutes here, then we'll get started. Start sharing. So let's give everyone like 1 or 2 more minutes, and then we'll get started. Okay, so let's get started. So this is the November 14th. So let's move that up. This is the November 22nd ORAN integration meeting. The agenda that we have for today is to just simply do some administrative items on approving or agreeing to some of the previous notes and general information. Then we'll do continuing the user stories. Remember, we have to have these user stories identified that we're going to want to do for release 3 before the 1st of December. So we'll go through that. I think we're coming to some consensus. So we'll talk about the NF track use cases. We made some progress on that with Joseph and with Sagar in the last week. And then we have some verification of the objectives and the use cases once we get through the NF track discussion. And then I want to talk to you about the user story template that was requested from SIG 1 that they're trying to use for all user stories going across and documenting them. And then we'll also talk about oh, got it in the wrong spot. Sorry about that, guys. And then we'll talk about, if we have time, we'll talk about some of the deliverables that SIG 2 has requested from us for when we go in and deal with the when we do the next phase as set of deliverables that would go to SIG 2. Okay. Does anyone else have any other things that they'd want to discuss today? Okay. I don't see any hands raised. So I'll just do the administrative things real quick from November 1st, 12th, and all these. So does anyone have any questions or changes they would like to make to the minutes up through November 14th? Okay, I'm going to note these have been agreed, and I'll mark them agreed down below. Okay. All right, so let's get started on the user stories and objectives. And so again, I started this with Sagar and Joseph trying to get some clarity of what the user, trying to figure out how to stop this. Hang on, guys. How do I get this down? Sorry about that. All right, so we started with these user stories that are here, and we wanted to talk about the network function track, right? And so we went through and had discussions with I went through and had discussions with Sagar of what, because a lot of these are OAI. There's the OSC that's coming for the XApps and the non-real-time RIP, and what we can do in release 3 and what's reasonable, right? And so they have these things that they want to try to do. They want to try to, and I verified this. They want to try to deploy one ORAN NF deployment with through the SMO. So they're going to deploy these elements themselves, okay? And they're going to take one of them and they're going to deploy it using the SMO functions themselves. And we had a conversation with Seishu. Is that possible to do that up there? And Seishu said, yeah, there's some work that has to be done to do that. So they think they can do that. So Alok, you raised your hand.
Yeah, just to confirm, if I'm audible, can anyone confirm?
Yes, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so a small agenda item wanted to add that was struggling before with the microphone. If time permits, just wanted to revisit the ORAN integration options. We had an internal discussion on Ericsson side and just wanted to have minor updates in that option. So we can take that in.
Is that the deployment options? Is that what you're talking about?
It's an integration option, right? So integration deployment, at least the title says like ORAN integration deployment. Right?
Okay.
If it is called as an integration option or a deployment option,
okay.
Maybe, right?
And we'll do that if time permits, okay?
Yeah, okay, sounds good.
Okay, all right. And what I'll do is I'll try to move that up, certainly, once we clear this stuff. Once we can get the stuff that we said we were going to get the network architecture, then certainly we can look at that. Because there is a when you look at we'll get to that. There is a function there. We said we need to go relook at. We need to go investigate these second or third options. So, okay. All right, so again, there's this idea that we're going to deploy the ORAN NF, these from OAI, from OSC. We're going to take the OSC and we're going to deploy the XApp in the near real-time RIC. We're going to configure, we're going to try to reconfigure and configure some ORAN NF deployments via the config map. And then there's a stretch goal because we weren't quite sure how we're going to realize the O1 interface that can either use or coexist with the ORAN enablers, including the NetConf mediation that Wim was working on. So we're going to do an investigation for release 3 and make that a stretch goal. I was talking with Joseph about that. He said we really need to look at this but we need to investigate what this means first, and they'll try to fit that in while they're doing these other things. So I guess to the group, this is a fairly full schedule. It'll be Sagar and Joseph are the primary leads on this, but what does the group think? Is there any objection to this being in the list of things that we're going to try to do for release 3?
So it says, sorry, I just want to have a little bit of more understanding of deploy ORAN network NF deployment with at least 1 through SMO. So are we assuming that we are going to define that SMO or implement that SMO specs in Nephew? What is the first line?
No. So there's three organizations doing this, right? There's work that's being done in OSC, there's work that's being done in OAI, and there might be work that's necessary to be done in Nepio with building out the enabler, right? And so when we're saying we're going to deploy take the OCU, right? CUP, right? Or CP. Let's say we're going to take the OCU CP and Sagar and that their team will say, hey, I want to deploy this and I want to use the SMO to deploy this. That means the SMO, user interfaces and all that stuff through. And Seishu is on and probably be able to do that, explain this better than I am. But we're going to use the SMO to do this instead of how they're doing it today in release 2, which is just, interacting with the enablers themselves directly. But go ahead, Seishu.
So just to ask a question before Seishu chips in so that Seishu can get this question also. Essentially today we are doing, for example, if you want to deploy, let's say, the RAN is supported in R2, and probably we are doing mostly through our existing northbound, which is package variant set, etc. So
Right.
that's we are deploying through the Nefio way. So what essentially we are saying in the bullet point 1 is, instead of doing that, let the SMO deploy deploy this one of these functions on a cluster that is running Nefio. Is that the right understanding?
Using the Nefio enablers, there's still be, so we got to adapt the SMO to use the Nefio enablers, the concepts of the packet variants and the variant sets, right? So
Okay, please go ahead, Seshu. Sorry.
Yeah, Bala, right now, right, SMO doesn't deploy this near real-time brick or the things. It's actually completely segregated. Okay, that's what the work I was talking about, and Tim was actually insisting on. I mean, it was actually talking about initially. So with the current thing, SMO becomes logical entity, and what we want is we want to have this deployment of the OI package, okay, on a OCloud, okay,
Yeah.
and using the OSC near real-time brick. That is the concept of it. Now, SMO is the entity which will enable this, and that's the place where Nefio enablers will come into picture. So right now it is not done that way in OSC. That's completely segregated. Okay, Bala. So
Okay,
we are
okay,
trying to
thanks.
stitch it makes sense right now, right? I mean, we don't have anything. Let me put it this way: we don't have anything SMO. So it's a green field for SMO. Nefio comes as an enabler for us to be able to stitch those two together. Okay, I think that makes sense to you, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks.
okay. All right. Any other questions on this list, guys? All right. I don't. Oh, Joey.
Yeah, I just have a question about this third bullet, the reconfigure ORAN NF deployments. Like that use case in ORAN anyway, it's not really talking about NF deployments. Or at least it's not talking about them currently. It talks about VNFs. So I don't know if it's a good basis or not to work on.
You're saying
or even
should
to map them to NF deployments. I'm not too sure yet. I'm not too sure about it. It would need to be looked at, I think. I don't know if it's fully
all right. So
ready.
the idea here is, Joey, because they use config maps to do, so the package that there's a principle within Nefio. Its configuration is data. So you can configure the NF with config sync and reconfigure it with Nefio enablers, right? And so we want to try to do that with one of these ORAN NFs, right? And so give me the words that are appropriate for what that's trying to do. That would help you understand this.
No, but yeah, but that's fine. And I get what you're saying. It's just we've not talked about reconfiguration of NF deployments. So and it's not exactly mapped to what was thought of an NF. So it's just it just raised a red flag for me looking at it. It could be fine. I just seeing it for the first time. I'd have to look into it.
Yeah,
or
and
at least try and understand it better.
So you'll be able to look into this better because and I'll get to that, right, guys? Again, trying to walk through. There's going to be these sets, right, of user stories that we have to fill out. So the devil's in the details, and the details will be in here, guys. Is what I'm trying to say. So if you can leave it with that, and you can work with Sagar and Joseph's team on filling out that use cases and get that, I think that'll help Joey. Okay.
Okay.
But they're going to try to use that config map, config sync enablers in order to provide the configuration for one of these NFs, is what they're trying to do. Okay. All right. So I don't see anything more with this. So I'm going to call this one okay for release 3. With that, we also talked about simply for the O Cloud. Joe, if you got your hand up, I'm not sure if it's still up or. Okay, Siren. Okay, all right. So All right, so we also have this cloud enablement that we talked about before, and so we kind of skinnied this down because of what's available in the SMO to being simply having use cases to do cloud registration itself, and then creating and deleting clusters, and then for the deployment, instantiating and terminating an NF deployment, right? And so does anyone have, we had to kind of skinny down before we were thinking about, well, maybe we can look at some help, but the group said, based upon the work that needs to be done before uh, for June, this is probably all that could be done. So the question I have, and this is what the group discussed last week, but they weren't able to really take any agreement. So I'm asking now for the group, is there any questions on this? And is there any concern with doing this for release 3?
I guess the constraint here is, the constraint, just to clarify, I mean, I guess the constraint is an NF deployment is one NF. Is that, I guess we're looking to broaden that out in the future. This is just a constraint for release 3. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so if you look at it, you could have a cloudified NF that can actually have multiple deployments, and so there might be a use case in the future that says, "Hey, I got one of these very distributed NFs that I need to support," and that's going to be somewhat on the SMO. So there's going to be reliant on some SMO features because they're going to have to home the individual deployments, right? So I was going to leave that go. Okay.
I mean, I guess, I mean, I guess as long as we're clear, the constraint here is only just basically to constrain the specific implementation of the use case, but future, or maybe a stretch goal could be where you can have an NF deployment, multiple NF deployments in a single NF. Sorry, my head is full of a cold at the minute, so I'm not really making a lot of sense.
Yeah, no, I get it. So what I did is I started putting backlog in here, right? And so what I could do is this one. I could put it into a backlog. NF with multiple NF deployments. Okay. That would work. I think.
Is it NF with multiple NF deployments? Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but.
I'm sorry. What's the question?
No. Is it NF with multiple NF deployments?
Yeah. So they're saying I can have multiple deployment unit. Use Etsy terms or whatever, but an NF can have multiple deployment units, right? So
like a recursive, is it? Like a recursive network function.
Well, network function can be comprised of multiple workloads, right?
Okay.
Effectively. So,
I don't know if it'll be with multiple NF deployments or realized by multiple NF deployments.
sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Realized with multiple. Okay. All right. So, Alok, you had your hand up. Oh, you have it up both ways. Good man. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, speaking on mute. Maybe on this specific slide, you can remove this infrastructure right, on the title because it is covering both infrastructure aspects as well as the deployment.
Yeah, sure. I don't.
And
I was just trying to figure out how to get backlogged up. We need to get this into the system somehow. We're not going to be able to handle this via PowerPoint too much longer.
No, that's fine. On slide 5 or 6, maybe either of it, if you go to. Yeah, so all these use cases that, and I'm assuming that we will be implementing it end to end, like having a request coming in from Nephew SMO based Nephew management cluster, right?
Yeah, there's a FOCOM IMS, FOCOM DMS,
right,
or not NFO DMS piece. Yes,
right. So it will be a request coming in from SMO Nephew management to cloud Nephew management cluster, and then that will basically deploy in case of the create Kubernetes cluster, it will spin up a new Kubernetes cluster. In case of the NF deployment, it will instantiate the NF deployments through the DMS endpoint, which is nothing but the
Yep. And as Seishu said, there's, that's greenfield, by the way, even the DMS side. So that's greenfield right now because it's using the
No,
Nepio
FOCOM
enabler.
is more greenfield than DMS. DMS, at least we have some relation coming from SDNR implementation of ONAP.
DMS, you do?
DMS is more I can say brownish, but
Okay,
FOCOM is more greenish.
Well, you know what you guys got. So I thought it was kind of greenfield because it's got to have an adaptation for the Nepio enabler. So
Yeah.
Okay, so that was more of a clarification I wanted. Like it's an end-to-end use case that we are after, which is defined in the ORAN.
Yep. We wanted they decided early on that really we wanted to get the SMO more and more involved, right, in starting this. So this is what this is trying to accomplish.
Yes, sorry, just one point to add to what Alok said. Alok, the entire genesis of this use case selection has also been the same. To have the realization of end-to-end use case from user perspective than to have it just for the sake of doing it, right? You can see we have registration, create, delete of the cluster, and then we have the instantiate and terminate of the network load or the network function on top of it. So that is exactly what we are also trying to do. Exactly.
Yeah. No, makes sense.
Okay, and so all that comes up to this. Any more questions on that? Just to make sure.
Rohit has a good question, actually.
Okay, did I miss one? Oh,
In the
there
chat,
you go.
in the chat.
What about scale in, scale out in a use case? Not this release.
Yes.
But Rohit, if you want to do that, certainly, guys. If you think of what you want to try to do, put it into the backlog, right? And we'll figure out how to get a better way of doing backlog identification. But if you put it in there, I'll be glad to. We'll give it a consideration, but it won't be a release 3. Okay.
If I may just add, oh, well, actually, you're going to get there after, but if you have any user stories you want to put in the backlog, what would be ideal is that you can fill in as well the user story template for it. So that way it's a comprehensive user story filled in the backlog and not just a one-liner thought.
Wish list.
And I'll show you the user story backlog, user stories themselves. Where they go.
And just one more request, we don't want wish list. We want more of participation in this because that's what we were also discussing in our previous call. So guys, we want all of you to please raise your shoulders. I mean, fold your cuffs in and come and join us. That's what is the request here. Thanks a lot.
And I think to the team, and I'll get to that, right? Because we're kind of pushing into some of the other ones. I was trying to get this sync. But to the team, guys, you guys got to understand this doesn't happen without you, right? And so what we're going to be asking for, and I'll get to this in a minute, but we're going to be asking for company commitments, people commitments to realize what we want to try to do for release 3. But I'm going to wait on that until I talk about 2 other things first. So I sync this in and talk about the next piece of it. So Alok and Istvan
yes.
first.
So Tim, what about things that are already in the backlog? For example, the O1 interface that can coexist with Nepio enablers. So we have a solution for that we think is for young netconf translation that also works with large KRMs due to the fact that we are using an aggregated API server and not CRTs and not etcd, but we have our own. So we haven't split it into multiple parts, big configurations, but we made Kubernetes to be able to handle, to basically to bypass the etcd and Kubernetes API restrictions on message sizes. And we can show that, and we are willing to contribute there. Most probably, we still have to have a clearance there. But so okay. What is the process here? As I said, we have something already. We have the code that we can show to you.
Yeah, Istvan. So what they're going to do, and this is what we talked about before, is right. We've got this O1 interface that is, by the way, NetConf that we've got to figure out how to use and coexist with Nepio enablers. And if you notice, on this one, and I'll add that one over the backlog. That says enabling, including the netconf yang mediation. That's the thing that you're talking about, right?
Exactly.
So we haven't uh, we're so we know we have that situation, but we're going to do the investigation of what that means to make sure that the enablers are there. So that will be an activity that they'll start, right? We won't actually realize it in release 3, but we may very well realize it in release 4 when that's available, right? And that'd be wonderful if you guys can work with Sagar and that team, Sagar and Joseph on that team, and that team to actually make this realized, right? Because we've got these other aspects as well, other than just CM, it's PM and FM as well.
That was the question. So then we will contact them, Sagar and Joseph, and then move from there.
That would be great help. Yep. We actually put the mediation in there knowing that we had that we think that there's going to be enablers available for that. So
yes, it's a big topic. We are struggling with it for a while as well. Sure. Yeah. Okay.
And Alok?
Yeah, but I had a different comment, but just to respond or clarify a little bit based on Istvan's comment. So here we are talking about the O1, and which we haven't discussed much in this forum, right? So far our integration discussions between ORAN and Nefio were focusing or revolving around the O2 interface mostly, right? So I would like to understand a little bit about the scoping things as well, about how Nefio would like to implement, or how it has to be implemented from that side of things, like same as we did for O2, right, with the different options, and what are the scope here in this case.
That's fine, but we'll do that during the release 3. We'll have that investigation during the release 3. Hello.
Okay. Then the other comment was about use case, the create Kubernetes cluster, or create cluster use case. I think it's on slide 5. So today in the spec, we don't have the concept of cluster templates, right? But we are discussing in ORAN the cluster template concept in terms of declarative, having the IMS as a declarative interface. So I'm assuming here we will be implementing this use case using the cluster template option back in our heads. Is that the correct?
Alexis? Again, it's a detail, but Alexis, I think, had some ideas about what he wanted to do with that.
Yeah, absolutely, Alok. We as we get closer to realizing this, we can discuss more, but that's the idea.
Yeah. Okay.
That was my understanding too, Alok, was that they're going to try the cluster template. All right, Syrian?
Yeah, it's probably the same question that Alok raised, but maybe I find it hard to understand. We kind of spent it, I mean, maybe I missed the meetings and maybe you discussed earlier on. I had to drop for a few minutes. I don't see the mapping to the O1 interface in terms of any of the discussions that we've had so far. And in terms of how Nefio supports netconf yang as an interface. So I think it's in my mind, it's a little bit risky to say we're going to draw out the architecture and spec out what the overlay, because basically what we're saying is that's Nefio playing a role in the RAN and FOAM function as well as the FOCOM and the FO. So
it is,
which is fine. It's fine. I mean, I understand that's kind of where Nefio, that's the third pillar in the Nefio sort of picture, but without representing that somehow or having some understanding of the role that it's playing there, it sounds like people in this meeting have ideas of how that could work. But I mean, I think that the devil's going to be in the details there. It's going to be very hard to say that's the goal for R3 without fully understanding that we're all aligned.
Oh, we're not realizing it in R3, Sharon.
Okay, but then what is, if you go back to use case number, because this is where I got a little bit confused. The use case around reconfigure ORAN NF deployments via config map.
Oh, this is using this. Yeah, this is using the.
This is over O2 then. This is reconfiguring the deployment. It's not reconfiguring the functions.
Well, they're going to reconfigure the functions, right? So there's application layer. The way that they do this today, this is the way Nefio does it today, right? You actually set up the application configuration, right? using the config map, and that gets deployed and monitored via config sync on and it's a CM of the application, right? And so that's what they're going to do for release 3. Now, the question is, we've got to have a bigger investigation of what that means. That's why I said coexist, right? That can use and coexist the Nepio enablers, including the netconf yang mediation. So I think there's got to be a whole bit about how we do with, you know, the I'm going to say the O1 aspects of the RAN, right?
Well, what sort of reconfiguration are you thinking about here? Then it's obviously not like setting cell parameters and things like that. It's more like
they do the well. I don't know.
It-
So it depends on what they're going to use, right? But I know it's application layer.
So I think Sarah, that I don't think this is. I think this is going to be in the existing way of doing things today. If for example, in R1 when we had to scale out or scale up, we did it the same way where we instantiated, couple of couple of CRDs. I don't think this is gonna do the O1 interface because the O1 interface is one I'm really looking forward to. The one you said, a demo or something. Yeah, I'm having worked in netconf yang and how rich the yang could be and netconf protocol is itself. Yeah, it'd be really interesting to see how this whole friction between these two worlds, how we can manage it. There is a big mismatch between the CFD world and the netconf world. I'm really looking forward to it. Yeah.
I cannot promise you a full solution, but I think that we have good ideas at least.
Yes. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. Yeah, thanks, Isro. Yeah.
I don't know whether it's worth making that stretch goal as a separate user story as opposed to maybe overloading this particular user story.
I think so. I
Hey,
think
guys, hang on. I want to be very clear here, right? So I think we're talking about a stretch goal even for release 3. We're trying to get this stuff in. Now, if they have resources available, we're gonna actually do work on trying to investigate how to do the O1 interface realization. Okay.
I'm not saying not to do it. I'm just saying that I was getting confused about its relationship to the reconfiguration on the bullet that's highlighted today, highlighted in the current slide, and then the stretch goal beneath it. So what I'm hearing from the conversation right now is that the bit that's highlighted is going to be using the existing config map update over O2, whereas the one below that is looking at a more of an O1 based approach.
Right.
Which is
and
maybe
how,
a different
how
user
those
story.
how those two coexist, right? That's the other piece we have to worry about.
So, yeah, so a quick comment on, I think it's an interesting discussion, and this takes me back to the actual use case defined in the ORAN. To be honest, I think this should not be even defined in the WG6 document, right? Because in the use case 3.5, it's all about O1 interface. And what I can listen from this discussion, there will be some aspects that we wanted to, like configuring the config maps and all those type of things will be over the O2 interface. Is that the correct assumption here? If that's the case, then we will not be complying to the use case 3.5 here.
All right. So do you want me to take 3.5 off of this thing? I don't have an issue because they've got to create their own.
I think we need more discussions on this, but I think at least, because we didn't have that level of discussion or alignment as we had for O2 today. For O1.
Okay. So leave it like this then, Alok? Is that what you're asking? I don't care.
Still, the scope is not clear, right, Tim? The reconfiguration of the NF deployment, how and or over which interface. I think
it's gonna be oh, okay. So this is I'm a bit lost here. So again, the way that Nepio currently uses it, when you look at 3.5GC, you look at the R2 of the ORAN interfunctions that they are the functions that they have down there for the RAN, right? They use the config map, right, elements to configure the actual application layer of those functions. Correct me if I'm wrong, guys, right? All this is doing is using that mechanism for these ORAN NFs that we've talked about before. And actually dealing with it to, using that mechanism. That's all they're doing. And then having a way of doing the reconfiguration of that, right? That's what's going to be in the use case that we have to identify the details of that use case. Now we've got a problem, or not a problem, but we have an issue that we need to resolve what that means in terms of those enablers, when those enablers are used. Those enablers are used, and when O1 is available for the ORAN NF, and where that reconciliation and how that existence happens, right? So that is the stretch investigation goal. I'm not
Right.
that is what is meant by that, right? And you should see that in a use case piece that I can hopefully get the next start on after we agree that this is actually something we want to do for release 3.
Yeah, I mean, reconfiguring of those RAN NFs, that, like you have said, it's done already today through the R2 scope, right? And now with
I don't
this
think
whole,
they've done that. I don't think they've done reconfiguration through the R2, right?
Yeah, we just only the initial just deployment with the configuration tab. So we don't do any reconfiguration after that. Yeah, I think that's so it's an extension of R2 basically.
okay, but then putting it here on this slide definitely gives a impression that what we are trying to achieve is through the end-to-end workflows enablement, right? Something high-level intent coming in from the SMO domain to the O cloud and getting it done, right? Which I think we should not scope in today for the R3. And the reason is we haven't had a discussion over O1 interface, how it will be defined and stuff like that.
I'm missing what you're saying. You're saying you don't want to try to do a reconfiguration.
No, I wanted to, but not triggered through the SMO, because then that is the O1, and I don't see we have the alignment there today.
Okay, so what I will
think-
do then, this Alok, right, is I will, because I don't even know if the SMO can do that anyway. So for R3, I'm not worried about it. But there's going to be an objective and user story for that, right? And I think we can have that discussion in there. I don't think the SMO is going to be able to do this, by the way, right? So because the functions aren't there anyway, right? So let's do that in that definition of this use case, if that's all right with you, Alok.
Okay.
Okay. All right. So, guys, it's 10:40, so I'm gonna give you the last two here. If we can do this quickly, because what I want to try to do is finally come into an agreement so we can get started on the details of everything we're discussing today, of just these final pieces of it. But Joey and Sarah?
Yeah,
Joey
I won't take up too much time because I was going to raise the same concern Alok raised, and I'm okay with it now that it doesn't reference that use case because it's not the same to me. But
Okay.
but this reconfiguration of NF deployments is not, it's fine if we want to do that here, but it's not like an ORAN defined thing right now. So it's not something you can do over O2 or that's been defined over O2. But if given what you've said, if that's what you want to try and do and extend something that was in R2, then fine, and you've taken away the reference to the use case. So at least, yeah, because it didn't match. That's what my comment was earlier in the meeting, that it didn't match up to me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I guess maybe I'd go a bit stronger than Joey, and it does still say at the top as an ORAN NF tracks user story. So I still don't understand, if we haven't discussed how the O1 interface is implemented. This reconfiguration, to my mind, is what we did in FUR1 was changing capacity for the UPF and the SMF, which at least as I understand it was sort of increasing the resources available to the UPF and SMF. It wasn't an application level functional change for the actual network functions. Whereas what you seem to be implying here is that there would be an application level change over O1.
Well,
So,
let me drop this
my
back
mind
to
is it's kind of blurring the boundary here between what we're trying to achieve.
Okay, so let me go back to Joseph and ask him what they were thinking about. So Joseph, specifically when you talked about the reconfig, what were we reconfiguring?
Yeah, I think both what Kieran was saying and what was mentioned as application level, both we were thinking, but I think if you think then, I mean, eventually you'll have to do via O1, the reconfiguration of the application. So then maybe we can avoid that. Probably we can stick to only the capacity or the cloud related configurations, right? For required for them. Maybe we can stick to that. That should also
So
be
something like this is what you're asking?
Yeah, but we'll have to check if OAI, yeah, maybe capacity maps to CPU, right? I think right now in 3.5G, so maybe.
All right, but
Yeah,
you
we
want
can
to
try
keep
to
it,
do it.
what we're saying, guys, and some of this is, it'll be in the use case, right? But what we're saying as this group is that we're going to focus on the non-application layer reconfiguration. So we're going to try to stay out of what the O1 business. I'm gonna
Yeah,
say that,
maybe we
right?
can. Yeah, maybe. we
Okay.
can put it.
Does anyone have an objection to that? Okay, so Joey,
So,
I don't know.
the only question is, I mean, it's already, how is it? I'm still not able to understand what is the difference between what we already have.
There
If it is
isn't,
capacity
so it
change,
all,
yes, if the capacity change of an existing NF, which is already we are doing.
for 5.3G, for
For
5.3C, not for the
3.5.
OAN and Fs, not for a DU. They're not doing that for the DUs right now or the CU. So we're just extending that to the
Okay.
ORAN or to the NFs.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Uh-huh.
We are not
Okay.
changing the methodology, but we are just adding that support to a new function.
That's right.
Yeah, maybe just.
And we're being sensitive to the fact that we don't want to bleed into the O1 OAM aspects of it, right? Until we do the investigation. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's what the conclusion is. Yeah. So
Okay,
initially
I'm
I had
good
a
with
right
that.
for the application, but I think now after the discussion that we need to, since we are going to do the investigation, so I think we probably wait till then.
Okay, that's fine. All right, so with this, here's the POCs, right? That we'll have the objectives, and what this does is the next step, guys, is we got to start creating these user stories, and the network architecture team has come up with a template for user stories, right? And so we start needing to have to create user stories for the 4 or 5 things. I guess we got the configuration in here as well, the reconfiguration. So we have these user stories. What I need for you for this team to do, right, is one. There's if you look at the fact that we're talking about these tracks, we have 3 different tracks, right? We've got a track that deals with the SMO piece. There's the OCloud piece, and then there's the RAN and F piece, right? So I need you to do me a favor, right? Over the next week or so, I need you to look at the use cases that we're talking about here, and decide if you or your company wants to be involved, because this doesn't get done without companies doing the work. Want to get involved in any of these use cases. If you want to get involved with the SMO side, which is the SMO and the NFO and the and FOCOM aspects of it, right? The packaging aspects of it. If you could contact Seishu with your interest, right, and he'll get you started with them on some of the user stories for that. If you are interested in the IMS, the DMS aspects of it, the cloud pieces of it, if you could contact Alexis, right, for that piece of it, and then start work on those use cases for it. And then finally, if you're interested in the network function deployments themselves, to include like how the O1 is going to be used by these network functions potentially, then if you could contact Sagar or Joseph to do that, that would be great. That way we know who's working on what, because what we're going to do is we're going to try to do this for release 3. But if it comes back and says no one wants to work on it, we will move that out of the release 3 piece. Are there any questions on that request? Okay, I don't see any hands raised at all. Good. That was that was too easy. All right. So back to the agenda. We talked about the story templates. We'll build those out. And then I will say to the team as well is that once we have those story templates built out, there is a list of deliverables that we need to talk about. But there's a list of deliverables that SIG2 has asked us to give them, including the deployment architecture, a thing called a deployment blueprint, the operators, the building blocks and components, and API design, and then test environment. So people have been saying that we need artifacts for each of these things. I don't know what these artifacts look like. I know some of these we've used before for release 2. That when we did the release 2, so there's several of these that we do have diagrams for that we can give to them, right? But there's some of these that don't have artifacts for how they want that done. So I think we're going to have a discussion with the network automation team to say, how do you want these things and what do each of these documents or deliverables need? So we'll need to have I'll request Wim and others to come in and talk about, what exactly they're looking for. That, right? So look for that probably beginning next week, right? Or the week after next. So we can start doing these deliverables. We said we would have these deliverables to SIG2 by the end of January. So I understand we're working, December is going to be a very light month, but we probably need to have all that stuff, at least synced in of what we want to try to accomplish by the first of the year. Okay. Okay. So that's that. The other one is the ORAN integration deployments. Alok, what was your concern? Do you want to share what your concern is? I can stop sharing if you want.
Yeah, so I think it's not as a concern, but just a complementary change, I think, to what we have discussed so far. Let me share.
You want to? Sure.
Yeah. So, let me know if it's visible.
We can see it.
Yeah, okay. So I think we have discussed multiple different options, and I think one of the most common or converged, where we actually converged, was around this options, right? So that we have the NFIO API adapters somewhere inside the FOCOM as well as an NFO, and which will be residing under the NFIO management cluster. And similarly, we have OCloud NFIO management cluster realizing the IMS and the DMS. So I think we had a discussion, was it last week or week before, that I think it's not very clear from this diagram that NFIO API adapter, will it be only for the southbound integration, or does it also include the northbound with the SMOS communication bus that we have to interact with the SMO other services, right? So we discussed internally as well on that question, and we come up with a small minor modification, like having some sort of a SMOS adapter, which is only accountable for the northbound integration, getting it registered as a service in the SME DME, so that it can communicate with the other SMOS services, right? And then we have the SPI, so calling it explicitly as southbound interface adapter, right? So that will integrate and touch base with the IMS and realizing the O2 IMS interface, right? And I think on the NFO side, we don't want or we don't need to have any such adapter, considering there will be the Kubernetes interface between the NFO and the DMS there, right? So that's the only change that we have or we are proposing here, like to have the SMOS adapter only accountable for the northbound integration, just to have it explicitly. Yeah. That's all. Questions, comments?
So,
Chat if there is any reason. Yeah, Tim.
yeah, I'm sorry, I lost the chat when you took the, so I don't know who's got their hands raised. Sorry, guys. So does anyone have any
Alexis.
questions? Oh, Alexis got his hand raised. There you go.
Yeah, no, I just raised my hand. I mean, we discussed this last week among us, but we're a small group, and I think this is definitely in line with that discussion and in line as well with the initial intent of that Nephew adapter we had was really for the southbound interface. So specifically calling it out SBI adapter and SMOS adapter, I think is okay. Having them, the only difference here is that it's not being called out as a Nephew adapter per se, right? So, but it's part of the boxes where there is the colored boxes saying it's part of the Nephew enabler. So my opinion is this is a fine fine clarification, and I don't have any objection for it, but I'm eager and I don't want to put. Well, I will. I'm going to put Seshu on the spot. I'm eager to get Seshu's opinion as well on these adapters and how they could also be realized or leveraged using some of the OSC components that might exist today.
Go ahead, Seshu.
Sorry, I was doing multitasking. What was the question again, Alexi? Sorry.
So
that,
go ahead, Alexis. You got it.
So the idea here is, initially in the architecture diagram, we had a Nephew adapter. It was fairly broad and it was placed southbound. I think the clarification being brought up by Alok and team is to make this adapter look like a northbound adapter and a southbound adapter for FOCOM and a northbound adapter for NFO, and call them out with their specific function. So the northbound would be really the SMOS adapter, whereas a southbound for FOCOM would be just an SBI adapter to talk to IMS. I believe these are fair clarification, but I wanted to get your opinion given the work that is happening on OSC for the SMO.
Actually, this northbound adapter is a discussion happening on the ORAN side right now. The work group 1 and other things are discussing. It has not yet reached the implementation level of details to be implemented in the ORAN SC also. But yeah, this makes sense because but I don't know, you want to call it adapter and put it in the FOCOM, or you want to put it as part of this SMOS is something we have to check, right? Because when you talk of service orchestrator, that's one piece which can adapt to different implementations and the NFO being one of them. That's another way of depicting the same. I'm saying instead of you putting a northbound adapter inside the FOCOM, perhaps it can go outside also and adapt to NFO also, right? That's also one more possibility. But yeah, it makes sense.
How would that happen? Like if it is outside the FOCOM?
No, that is because if you're trying to take a look on that point, if you're trying to take an existing implementation, which we are also looking into, for example, SO of ONAP. I'm just giving an example. Okay, don't take it again. It's too complex to take it as it is, but just an example I'm talking about. So adapting that with southbound, usually you'll have adapter inside that, right? Because that can actually lead to multiple implementations, and one of them being this.
Yeah, but SO will be a separate SMOS, right? So that will again, if it has to communicate with FOCOM, it will communicate by this SMOS communication, right? So
yes,
and then this SMOS adapter is just like integrating your Nephew-based FOCOM realization to the SMOS communication so that it can communicate with other SMOS.
Look, I'm not against it. As I said, I'm not against it, but the adaptation can be part of this or can be part of the bigger picture also. That's what we have to see how it goes, right? I'm actually
So-
putting it more like a plug and play.
So I will suggest, I think I have it. Oh, sorry, I'm jumping the line. So Karen, go ahead.
No, I was going to comment that I think, you know, even if there is an adaptation in the service orchestration, if you think about Nepio exposing, for example, Kubernetes resources, it may not be the best way for those to be accessed from a service orchestration function. So you may need some kind of like RESTful API to integrate with SMOS. That isn't just the full gamut of Kubernetes resources. And I think there was a presentation back earlier in June or something like that about taking one of the TMF APIs as a baseline to start that discussion.
Yeah, I had a follow-up on with them too. Actually, that's true, Kisran. Yeah,
So,
again,
I mean, I think you need something in Nepio to kind of abstract it away from just exposing all of the Kubernetes that you know.
Yeah, no, as I said again, it's not
custom
against it. I'm
resources.
just putting the other suggestions also. This looks okay. I mean, this is required anyways. We are talking about this in the ORAN group too, group 1 and other things also. And the end of the day, we have to take it to larger orchestration piece. And at one point or other, we require to even think of it that it's good to actually have the adaptation. I'm completely in favor of that thought.
Okay, so let me ask you a
So-
question, right? So I'm sorry, I'm trying to get we got 2 minutes. So do we want to have further discussion on this, guys? Because I don't know if we can come to agreement today, but I can put it on the schedule for next time.
But
Well, actually, Tim, this is the
Go ahead.
reason I raised my hand. I think we have agreement that this is something needed. I believe based on our discussion, it's good enough for R3. So we can, I would be, yeah, sorry for the noise. Give me 1 second.
So is it just the SMO adapters? Because I see something that says SPI adapters, and before we called them NetBio APIs, both the NFO and the FOCOM.
Sorry, so where I was going is I think this is good enough for R3, and we can evolve this based on some of this issue comments, based on how we mature in R4 and so on. I wouldn't ask for a further discussion on this. I would just go with this because it seems we're all in agreement that we need that adapter.
Right, but just the SMO adapters? Because before, if you look at like in the previous slide, we had the NetBio API stuff in both the NFO and the FOCOM. So I mean, I don't care putting in the SMOS adapters on top of those things. That's the point.
Yeah. So I think the intention here again, I think in the R3 we can only focus on the SPI adapter, right? Because we are focusing on realizing the O2 IMS and O2 DMS and the use cases even which we are putting it in the backlog. That doesn't deal with the NordPon integration at all, right? It's all O2 based, which is between FOCOM and the IMS and the DMS with the NFO. So I think in R3 scope, we will only focus on the SPI adapter as far as I can see. And then down the line, like Alexis was saying, R4 and beyond, maybe we can see.
Remind later. All right.
Sorry. So yeah, the SMO adapter, I think, yeah, we can focus it on later. That's what I was saying that time. But
Okay, so do you want me, my question is this, right? I'm a simple guy, right? So in the current deployment architecture, right? If you look at what we currently have, we have FOCOM and we have NFO. Do you want me to put the SMO adapters in there as well? I believe everyone said that's fine.
SBI adapter, not SMO adapter. You're talking about SBI adapter, right? Not SMO adapter.
The SMOS adapter. Do you want me to put those diagrams, those boxes in there?
Yes.
Okay.
Hold on, Tim, are you saying as well as the Nepio API adapters that are already there?
That's right.
No, but there's
It
a
would be
bit
instead.
confusion. It's instead of those adapters, because if you look at the slide, I forget there's
Okay,
what number
so
it is.
I don't know enough about this then. So
Yeah,
guys,
no,
have to go.
in that picture, the old picture, it's
replace
misleading. They're not southbound adapters. If you look, there's another slide talking about them, that they're northbound. It's just we just moved them kind of, we tried to make it clearer. Yeah, if you go to slide 9.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of shows what they are trying to represent. So it's not, we're not adding these MOS adapters as well as these. We're being more explicit what they are, and then adding this outbound adapter for the Qualcomm.
They're not, so again,
That's based on the
Alexis?
discussions we had last week with
Yeah,
Alexis.
this is in line with Ravi's comment. So I don't think there is any major objection from Ravi neither. This is exactly what Ravi meant to say initially. These adapters to be northbound adapters.
Mhm.
So I can take this team and I can manage that offline between now and next week. If this is the request, I can take care of this with the team here.
So with slide 7, what we are just proposing, replace the Nephew adapter with these two individual boxes. And then in the R3, we can only focus on the SPI adapter because that's what we will be implementing through those use cases, right?
Okay, all right. So the question is to the group is, does anyone object to using this as the integration picture for the deployment architecture? And Alexis will make the adjustments as necessary. I can't see if anyone's got their hand raised. Sorry,
Joey.
Joey does. Okay, good.
Oh no,
Joey?
he just
I
lowered
made my
hand.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so does anyone object to that? All right, I'll note that, and Alexis, if you can make the change.
Yeah, I'll take Alex slide. Thanks.
Thank you.
But there's three or four of them that.
Yeah,
that-
I'll take care of it, team.
Okay. Anything else? Then we're over by 3 minutes, guys. So anything else for today that needs to be discussed?
One
If
question,
not-
are we meeting next
yeah.
week? Next week, I think, is it Thanksgiving this week or next week? Sorry.
No, it's this week. It's tomorrow.
Okay.
So we're meeting next week. In fact, next week there was a request for you and Alexis to talk about the SMO, IMS, DMS interactions and what ORAN and OFC has done. And there's a request from Sagar who will do that next week to do the OAF.
Actually, I was planning for a leave next week, so that was the reason I asked this.
Okay, if you could mail me when you and Alexis want to do that, I'll make sure it's on the
Me and
schedule.
Alexi will catch up. I mean, and
Okay.
we will get back to you on that. Sure.
All right, cool as in school. All right, guys.
Alexi, to do for you and me.
Yeah, thanks everyone.
All right, talk to you later, guys. Bye.
Yeah, bye bye.